I'm sure someone will want to talk about anonymity. But I'm hoping that you will raise your hands, we will hear the keywords, and we're going to put the list up here. Then we're going to have a threaded discussion of each of those topics. Does that make sense? Then we can have some coherence. We hope there will be no speeches from the floor. Even after the lightning round, you will be invited to speak then to these issues. You get more than one sentence. But the idea is to give people the maximum chance to participate. So it's going to be a little wild and crazy. And if I cut you off, you have to forgive me in advance, because this is the format we're experimenting with. But here's the real payoff. After we've gotten I'm hoping three keywords up, and we start our discussion of the first topic, the second topic, and then the third topic, we will have finished 30 minutes of our session. Then we're going to talk about suggestions for 30 minutes. Same thing, lightning round, something, technology solution. And I want you then, after we've done that, to flesh out what these suggestions are. So 30 minutes for the challenges that we think are out there, 30 minutes for suggestions on how to improve the situation. Does that make sense to folks? Shall we try that? Okay. So thanks to the helpers in the back who are collecting the keywords and putting them up here. I wanted to note that Bertrand de la Chapelle said yesterday that the internet is a range of public and private spaces. We've also been told at this conference that in principle, privacy and freedom of expression should not be in conflict. They're of equal importance. Both are essential to having an enlightened and creative community. But these two rights, they might reinforce each other, as for example, when you're trying to have anonymous expression on the internet. And we've had workshops about that, and we're still having some more discussions about that. But some of you, I think, also want to talk today about a challenge that increasingly on the internet, privacy seems to be compromised. And as a result, sometimes free speech is in trouble. We've heard from many participants at this conference, including the last panel, that governments may be trying to take away privacy of our communications in order to track us down, punish dissent, or in some cases, address defamation, hate speech, and security problems. But it isn't just governments. During the 2008 USA presidential election, some of my geek friends from Columbia University in New York contacted me because they were looking for people who would help them track down the IP addresses of the individuals and groups that were spreading hate speech and lies about Barack Obama. And then when I talked to my MIT colleagues about this, they said, "Are you kidding? We're not going to be in the process of tracking down IP addresses. That goes against all of our principles of protecting the anonymity of speech." So I know the communities are divided on these issues. And I'd say, from my own perspective, if I'm working on public issues as a member of the government or as someone who's literally trying to work in the public space, then I think my behavior should be exposed to transparency. WikiLeaks, come and get me. But I also deserve to have a private life. And I really don't want someone to take control of my personal information and commercialize it or repurpose it for their own artistic purposes. So that's my perspective. Should there be no limits? Should there be any accountability for our speech? There's another whole set of questions about data gathering and retention and use. And some companies, of course, are using websites and online services especially, reusing my data for a different private purpose. When I check that box to say I've read the terms of use, what am I really selling? What am I giving away there? I hope we won't talk today about oversharing. I think that's a cultural practice. That's really not going to be a productive conversation. But I do think we can talk about technology and choices that are made by companies, by governments, and by all of us about how to balance these issues of privacy and free expression. One question I have is, many companies seem to make it the default position, especially in America. I think less so in Europe. I don't know about Asia and Africa and Latin America. But the default position is that people consent to having their data used and taken. I wonder if that's the right default position, if that's the right assumption. And also there's a great cultural and business model about reusing other people's original content. So in the end, to me, it's almost like a Faustian bargain. I can use the power of the internet, this amazing accelerator, amplifier, and contextualizer. But my internet space is really not going to be mine. It's not going to be private. Should it be? Could it be? Who's helping us preserve that privacy? Who's taking it away? So, those are my concerns and thoughts. Now I want to go to the lightning round and ask you about yours. Who would like to start? A one-sentence keyword on what you think we should spend 10 minutes talking about here. Anybody? Quickly. Yes.
Hi. I think that we need to talk more about the intersection between governments and corporations. Generally, the concern is...
More than one sentence, if that's not a keyword. I want a keyword.
Cost of data being shared between governments and corporations.
Okay, so that's so that's data sharing between governments and corporations. Okay, that's a keyword.
Terms of service as the law of the commercial space.
All right, I'm not sure we're getting broad enough keywords here. Christina.
Thank you. I would propose to discuss the commodification of personal information in the internet.
Okay, the commodification, commercialization. Okay, one more.
Question of whether privacy and anonymity gives you a right to oblivion.
Okay, that's the topic of anonymity. Do we have our list yet? No.
Privacy should not be a right.
Okay, wait a minute. Privacy should not be a right. Okay. We've got too many. One more?
Do you want to take a few and then see if there's any consensus?
We'll sort it out. Yeah, okay.
Expiry of the data and also the expiry of the consent.
That's the retention issue, data retention. Thank you. Okay. So, one more over there.
General surveillance of citizens, like the passenger name records and SWIFT agreement and all that stuff.
Okay,
which
good.
is related also to data retention.
All right. So, once we have our list.
Hold on. Privacy laws are seen as business regulation first and foremost, so they're negotiated as business.
Do we have a list yet? Let's start with one that I know we've already talked about, and then we'll put the list up, the whole list. Anonymity. The fact that people are coming, governments and individuals want to break our anonymity. Let's start with that. Now we've ended the lightning round and we want to talk about this issue. Let's start with that. Okay, who wants to talk about the issue of anonymity? The fact that our privacy, as we try to speak, can be violated. People can find out who we are. They can track us down. They can prosecute us, persecute us, chill us. Who would like to talk about that? Oh, here. Eva. Please identify yourself.
Thank you. I'm Eva Shimon from the Hungarian Civil Liberties Union, and I would like to add some thoughts about the whole anonymity issue in the context of social networks and how it changed. And for do that, I would like to make a few remarks on the background how privacy is considered. From the technology perspective, privacy, from the privacy perspective, technology was always considered as a threat to privacy. If you think about Warren and Brandeis' article on privacy back to 1890, they said, and they were writing about the new Kodak snapshot camera, which made people able to take pictures secretly. And from that point, we can see that privacy has some shifts in the discourse. So first, the development of technology was considered as a threat to privacy, while the internet at the first hand seemed to be as a great place for anonymity. If you remember the cartoon in 1995 in the New Yorker where two dogs were using the internet, and it was written under that on the internet nobody knows you are a dog. And since that, it's changed, and what's really changed is the social networking sites. Because in social networking, we disclose more data and offline data, not only online data of ourselves, to make sure that we can connect and we can get in touch people. For what? For make sure that we can influence, we can raise our voice. So in this sense, privacy and freedom of expression is connected together. What we can detect, and that's for my last remark, is that since social networks are developing, people's identities and different identities, online and offline identities, are merging together. So they reveal more and more personal data for the reason to have a greater influence on people around and raise the voice. So the question is that on the internet, as we know, we pay with our personal data to make able to use the network. The question is that, is it a balanced issue? Do we give enough or more data than it is needed to raise our voice? I have some recommendations, but I believe it's for the next part. Thank you.
Okay. Sorry. Okay, I think we have someone over here. Please identify yourself.
Xiao Qiang, UC Berkeley, but I'm mainly trying to share some of the China practices on this question. When you see anonymity, I want to raise the question, not really a question, I'm sharing that a major campaign of a political control, internet control in China is called real name registration. In one word, the government wants to know everybody's identity, whether you are buying a cell phone, whether you're speaking on a news forum, or whether you are registering a website. You need your real identity that the government wants to know in their database, therefore becoming the fundamental cornerstone of surveillance and forcing the self-censorship of the citizen speaking. Add two more elements to it. One is, yes, Chinese internet, like many other places, is also full of defaming, hate of speech, and false information, every other behavior. There is a reason that government also needs to do that. Therefore, the Chinese government often cite that they are practicing international practice. They are borrowing other countries, at least that's they're justifying themselves, the practices and laws in order to regulate Chinese internet. But in reality, political speech is really what they're after.
Thank you. Okay, since our time is really short, we're going to move to data retention, which is related. It's related. Who wants to talk to this issue of the fact that companies, governments are keeping our personal data? They're figuring out how to get to us. It's for security reasons. It's for commercial reasons. Who wants to talk to this issue? Somebody suggested it. Over here. Please identify yourself.
Hi, I'm Stefan. I'm from the internet. And I'd like to extend this issue of data retention, which is usually just covering internet usage, email usage, and maybe phone usage. But I'm really afraid of a new kind of technology that is set-top boxes, which are usually closed and which can track and usually track what you are watching. And this is being used by the companies for profiling of you and selling data. And of course, this is much, much more invasive than just looking at the books that we are borrowing from a library, because our everyday television watching habits are, I think, much, much more telling than just the books that we're borrowing.
Thank you. Who else has some concerns? Yes, Christina.
Thank Christina again from CEU. I think data retention has two dimensions. We have, first of all, the public sector data retention efforts. This is becoming increasingly a trend. We know that in the European Union, we have a data retention directive, which requires that all member states are starting to retain traffic data of internet use, your emails, when you send your emails, to whom. So basically the data that describes the email conversation, not the content. From 6 months up to 24 months, so these are not news for you. The problem with this is, and it's widely challenged also in the courts, that it's done for every user, and it is not tied to a special occasion. So therefore, we are becoming upfront suspicious, basically, as citizens using the internet. The second aspect, and this is a trend, and when Europe is doing that, frankly, other countries will follow suit. Yeah? It will come in other regions, it will become a trend, if there will not be maybe a possibility to stop it via the courts. The second concern about data retention is that private sector, of course, also collects data for various purposes. Some of them are even very legitimate. They collect data in order to improve their service. How can a search engine improve their service if they don't know what people are looking for and understand a bit better this time how they can formulate their algorithms? Other purposes are more questionable, and they should definitely be always rooted on the consent of the user. And these purposes are behavioral advertising, profiling of users, the trading of data among companies and bigger advertisement networks. And here I think we develop probably in a direction that we should as users also be more cautious about, because what is in the private sector can be potentially also a honeypot for public sector scrutiny. But in addition to that, when we are getting used to share our data all the time, then it might also result in a situation that we lose our culture of privacy, and that will change probably future internet and our habits.
Thank you. Okay, next. Anybody want to talk about data retention?
I not only have a concern with data retention, I also have some solutions or some proposals.
We're not in the solutions yet.
Oh, okay.
But I'm saving your solution for later. Be sure we call on you. Okay, so who else wants to talk about data retention? Anybody? Is anybody troubled? I know that in Europe, there are regulations that we don't have in the US about the use of tracking vehicles to see where we live and put this up on the web. I'm sorry,
Hi,
over here. Excuse me, please, identify yourself.
Sharon Hom from Human Rights in China. Just add 3 quick issues to the data retention issues: standards, data mining, and adequate safeguards. So on standards, while there are some regional, or like the EU has standards, it's not very useful when we talk about data retention that's already in on the internet, and it crosses jurisdictions. On data mining, because there are such powerful data mining programs and platforms like Siemens and all the others, that they're able to take. Why is data retention important? Is because these different databases can then be combined and mined for finding patterns, for finding people, for finding all kinds of things. And because they can take, I think a lot of you do know about this, so I won't go into it. The third thing is adequate safeguards, so that what happens and gets exacerbated is that if individual databases don't have adequate protections, so that people know what's in it, how long is it in it, how is it being transferred, who is it being transferred to, who has access to it, then when you couple that with data mining, the concerns for both expression and privacy get really exacerbated.
Good, thanks. One last comment on this topic.
Yeah, very, very quickly to remind what David was saying regarding the tension in many countries where governments at the same time require more data retention and on the other hand require deletion of data. And I would second what was said before. There is a need for frameworks like standards regarding how data is being compiled. The second element is monitoring mechanisms so that abuses of the data can be logged or identified. And the third element is for the users to have ways of recourse or dispute resolution mechanisms.
Good, we're bleeding into solutions already. And we have one more person at the microphone.
Okay, okay. Please.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, and then we'll come to you.
Okay, I just want to talk about a company in Jordan and they developed a camera called Iris Guard. And the hardware is developed in London, but the company is based in Jordan. And this camera is basically can scan the iris, and the margin of error is 1 of 10 million. So they define your identity, and it's now installed in many airports around the world, and also used in banks. But the danger about this is that it immediately identify your identity, no matter how change your passport or everything. But the danger about this is that they have a cloud computing. All data are stored in one single server, so that all information about you is basically stored in central space. So this is really scary things that we're facing, technology versus security. So how far are we going with this?
Good, thanks. We have one more person standing at the...
And actually one more after that, if that's all right.
Oh, okay.
Jarosław Lipszyc from Poland. There is a lot of discussions on data retention in the public sector, I mean, regarding to what governments know about us and what telecoms know about us. However, there is not much talk about data retention in corporate sector. I mean, in the data, the different corporations collect and think social networks, for example. And this is something I think we need to focus more on. What happens with all the things I put on Facebook, for example? What kind of control I have over this data? Who has access to this data? Who keeps backups and for how long? And this is something which I think needs to be regulated because this is obviously more and more important in an information society.
Thank you. And Kate says there's another person over here.
Hi, I'm Monica from CEU, and I wanted to bring up the issue of trust, and I think that relates to a point made earlier about the commercialization of identity and also the merging of online and offline personalities or identities. On one hand, this is happening in order to know that you can trust the relationship you're having with another user. But on the other, so when looking at how these identities are merging, the anonymity of it, or the relationship between the real person's physical body and also the online body is encouraged in order to garner relationships of trust. But on the other hand, I also wanted to bring up the fact that this process does also have impacts on the daily practices of people, and not just that governments or commercial organizations can be looking at data, but also, or looking at real people, but also this happens between users. And I wanted to bring up, like, for example, cyber stalking or other ways that users can access each other's data and how that can have violent or often terrible results.
Thank you. And I think we made a sort of a summary decision that the third area, since we touched a little bit about corporations and governments, even though that was something people want to talk about, the very broad issue of is there a right to privacy, maybe you would like to start with that.
Yeah, I'm Ronnie Coven from the World Press Freedom Committee. There's a school of legal thought amongst media freedom lawyers that Louis Brandeis, in inventing the right to privacy, which he didn't call a right to privacy, he called it the right to be left alone, made a catastrophic conceptual mistake. There's a very leading American blogger named Declan McCullough who says that privacy is a preference, not a right. It's been used more and more in American courts as a way to get around First Amendment freedom of expression rights. It can be two-edged, it can be a form of censorship.
Okay.
And one more point. In Europe, there are a lot of privacy laws, and they are very badly misused. For example, François Mitterrand, the French president, had his second family protected under the concept of privacy, and the result was an abusive, illegal system of wiretapping of the whole Parisian political and media elite.
Good. Can I put a question to the group since we're about to move into our solutions phase? And that is, should it be the default position, should it be the assumption by corporations and governments that they have a right to collect and retain our data? Or should there be an easier way technologically for us to opt out? How many people think that the technology's fine and we should just stick with things the way they are? One person? Two people? Okay. How many people now are going to tell us some solutions to these problems? We have some solutions in the audience. Okay, and we're going to get back over here in a minute. Oh my goodness, we have a lot of them. So let's start with you.
I'm Ivan from Hungary. We used to talk about privacy as a separate matter from free speech and freedom to access to information. I think these are the two sides of the same coin. So if we try to find a solution, we should know that these are, one, sister rights. Second, the same technology is behind the internet technology, behind the two spheres. So my suggestion is, if you believe that Lawrence Lessig is right when saying that the code is the law today, then first you must change the code, not the services. The code itself, you must learn what IT professionals think about privacy and about free speech, and then try to convince them to change the code itself.
Okay, so we're working on the code writers. Okay, over here.
Hi. Okay. I have three proposals for solutions. The first is kind of obvious. Always encrypt whatever you're sending. I know it's not a no-brainer, but the effort is really worth it. The second one I can recommend to everyone is to operate his own infrastructure. Do not use centralized services. Operate your own infrastructure in private, and then you can avoid being under the scrutiny of data retention. This is the second one. And the third one is referring back to Sharon's concern that these databases are being heavily data mined and connected to each other. I think it is our duty, everyone's duty, to infect these databases with false data so that scrubbing and data mining this database makes no sense and the cost is prohibitive. So I urge everyone to always provide false data and as much as possible to these databases.
And I'll just add one more thing, which is I hope in the workshops we got into some more detail on this, but it's just a basic best practice to keep updating your software. Because as people are developing these bots to come in and seize our information, there are also people who are trying to protect it. So keep updating your software. That's just basic best practice. Okay.
Solutions. We need an international norm, and privacy needs to be enshrined in international treaties. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights is old, needs to be updated.
Someone, oh,
I
Bob.
want to ask a question. Who should set that norm?
He said, we the people.
Oh, okay.
And Bob said, not in the U.S. Okay. Oh, someone said not in the U.S. Excuse me. It was not Bob. Okay, who's next, Kate? Oh, we have a gentleman standing, and then Ava. Okay.
I'd like to propose two solutions.
Sunil from India.
Yes, Sunil from India. Two solutions. The first is an idea by a young man called Tivador. It's a dynamic policy instrument. Every time a data retention regime is put into place, there must be an audit. If the social benefit outweighs the social cost, then that data retention regime can stay. Otherwise, incrementally, the data retention regime should be made smaller and smaller. The second point, speaking to Ronald's concerns and also to the concerns of activists in this room, privacy should be a function of power. If you are a powerful person, then you can't expect any privacy. But if you're an ordinary citizen, then there should be full protection of your privacy. Thank you.
How many people agree with that statement? Okay, good. That helps. Who's next? Eva.
am I heard? Yeah. I've two recommendations. One is to change the discourse. One is to change the discourse. So what Facebook and other social network sites are offering, that people are not interested in privacy anymore. And according to Berkman Center's study, which was issued recently, it proves that people are still concerned of privacy, but it should make clear. That's one thing. The other thing is the knowledge, to make sure that people know about privacy issues, know about how to use softwares, and know about the negative externalities of using social networking sites, and for that, reshaping the software and giving tools to people, privacy-enhancing technologies would help them to fight back to those who are collecting data.
I want to hear from some journalists. Is there anybody who wants to talk about the importance of actually breaking some of these moments of privacy? The searching for information? Does anybody share that? Or is that only an old-fashioned notion that some things are kept private that should be public? Yeah, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I'm Heather Brooke, a journalist and a writer. My concern is that I suppose I break privacy quite a lot, but I focus on public officials who I believe don't have a right to privacy in relation to how they spend public money or make decisions based on the public. But certainly there's elements of the British press who have a different idea about privacy, and they sort of think it's a free-for-all. But I think the issue about power is really important. And what I would say as a journalist is that our role is to give voice to the powerless, and so the sort of tabloid invasions of privacy, I think, are wrong, because they're picking on the powerless people rather than the powerful. So I think it does hinge around who does have power.
Thank you.
Can I just
Bob,
point out that for those who don't know Heather's role in all of these things in Britain, she was largely responsible for the freedom of information work that went into revealing the expense accounts of various lords and MPs and folks like that, and in so doing exposed a great deal of what was private information, one could say, that eventually went public and caused a great deal of reform.
So there seems to be a general sense for a solution to this problem, that the tabloid people should just go after the powerful and leave the poor, lowly classes alone. Okay, we'll tell them that. Good. We have some solutions over here. While you talk, Kate's going over there. Go ahead.
Okay, just a really quick point. So I really agree with the point about power that's been made, I guess, twice now. And what I was going to say about that, or what I was going to add to it, was that one word that's implicit in this entire conversation, but that nobody has stated explicitly, is ownership. And who owns your data? The law's clear in some places, not clear in other places. And if we take as explicit that you own your data, then as a solution, there's a conversation that can be had about when and how you sell your data. And that changes the relationship between you and Facebook, you and Google. And I would actually argue that we give away too much. That when we sign those terms of service agreements, that in an attempt to gain access to Facebook or whatever it might be, we're giving away something that's far more valuable. That's it.
How do we do that? How do we codify that we own our own data? Does somebody have a specific idea about that?
Can I?
Just literally a sentence about that?
I'm not surprised. I haven't heard this from this audience so far, but how about pushing for government legislation to regulate these things, to governments ensuring what you can and cannot write in your terms of service in the first place? Just an idea.
Okay, so some governments might do this, some might do it differently, but that's an interesting point. Rex?
Thank you. Rex Hughes, Chatham House. My personal solution would be to copyright yourself and then take legal proceedings against anyone who steals your proprietary personal information, including DNA.
There's always work to be done for lawyers, right? Christina, I think we have to go over here. Yes.
I'm Ivan from Moscow. I would say that I have a personal solution that, you know, the problem is there where your personal practice collides with social norms, and when somebody is actually stealing something from you. So there are a number of solutions. First, how to behave in the house with walls of glass, so that you should behave yourself in such a way that you don't raise issues that distract you from what you're doing.
But what if I want to misbehave?
Then another issue is it's quite still easy to make a false identity. So I think the next big thing basically is a false identity market. So where we're going two ways. I think we're going to confront the places where there are such social norms that don't let you misbehave, because there will be a lot of tension between the people and the social structure on one hand. On the other hand, we're going to a new black market for false identities, which is going to be the next big market, I think, on the internet.
And another big market will be, it already exists, the people who go to scrub your internet identities. They go and try to erase everything for you. It's a very interesting market niche. Yes?
One more thought on protecting ordinary people in the context of social networking. Simply force corporations to change default settings, because I don't believe in education so much as I believe in ignorance. If people are protected by definition because of the settings that Facebook sets, it could help a lot. And the second thought, we might consider some sort of fees for the corporations for processing data. We talk about data mining. Maybe the problem wouldn't be that huge if they had to pay for certain information they reuse for their internal purposes.
Interesting. Okay. Who else?
One right behind.
I just have an expectation and not a solution. But basically, I believe that privacy is going to be one of the major reasons, in addition to the big corporation and the high cost of the internet. It's going to be a major reason that internet will be an obsolete technology, and there is a new technology and a new web will appear to humanity soon.
Wow.
I like to have a kind the expectation for the solution as an end user. One thing is about we need to identify what is a private and public in the internet clearer. Right now we don't know where is the private. Actually, we did something in the private manner, but it also come up with it's a public known about this. So we still need to be have a clear definitions about private, public in the cyberspace as well. That's one point. And another point is about when we talk about data retention, I start think about we need transparency. As I don't know, as I'm not the technical person, quite low tech, I don't know it's possible for us, for the user, to know what kinds of information that the company keep, and we should have a chance to know what the record that we've been keep. Yeah.
I think we heard that Google is developing further some techniques to show us when the government is blocking our access to information. Maybe there can be tools that show us popping up whenever someone is grabbing our information. That would be a very busy screen, I'm afraid.
Well, Google can develop a software to show us what information Google and Facebook has been collecting about us. I get back to false identity, and I would say the rights of privacy go hand in hand with the right of anonymity. If you can guarantee your anonymity, and you can be more, you can guarantee more privacy. So people who's lobbying more for privacy go at first and lobby more for the right to being anonymous on the internet.
Sorry. I think there are some notable exceptions, but essentially there's a mismatch between the user, vice versa, an online service provider, and especially in an industry that is characterized by economies of scale, where really huge platforms are having most of the users attracted. And this mismatch must be managed, and it cannot be that signing up for a service is basically automatically generating a consent to all the data collection, mining, profiling, whatever kind of practices. And here we need a sort of a different paradigm, and we have to change that so that users are really put in charge and not, first of all, have to agree and later have to manage everything, micromanage their privacy, basically.
Omar Kaminsky from Brazil. There are two remarkable phrases I want to invite everybody to think about it. Andy Warhol said, in the future, everybody will have 15 minutes of fame. And Phil Zimmerman from PGP said, in the future, everybody must have 15 minutes of privacy.
I like that. I hope we can find it too. More ideas, more suggestions. I mean, the idea of creating the right to own our own data is very intriguing. I'm not sure how we actually do that. You have one more solution for us.
Hi, Anupam Chander. I think that companies in this space need to work together through initiatives like the GNI to develop a code of best practices that is very particular, for example, in issues such as transparency. For example, if a company releases information about some individual based upon a government request, at least it should tell us how many times it's done so over a certain period of time, so that we at least, if it can't under the governmental requirements, tell the individual subject about whom it's speaking that his or her information has been released. At least it should tell the public, civil society at large, how many times it's doing so.
I would say that is a terrific idea. The problem that we've encountered, and we're going to show some of these new tools that Google has developed in just a minute or two, is that in certain countries it's a violation of national security laws to even say how many requests that you've had. So you put your local employees at risk if you put out such a number. So great idea, hard to put into effect in certain places.
Bob, can I ask you a process question about Google?
Uh-oh.
When you have a request from a government and you have the right for your user, is there a process? Do you just negotiate it case by case, or what's happening with that?
It's a very, very complex process, and I know that doesn't make anybody here happy for me to say that, but it does go through through our legal group. In some cases, frankly, it's pretty simple. If we know that the government agency is trustworthy, if we know that it's a matter of criminal law, child pornography circles, that kind of thing, it's a fairly easy case. In other cases, it has to be raised up to the level of our Deputy General Counsel, who deals with most of these unusual gray area cases. I wish I could say there was black and white. There was a simple set of rules. The default is not to give away the information. That's the default. They have to essentially prove their case that they need this information and show us exactly why they need the information. And I would say that if you were going to take the IT sector in general and you were going to say which parts of the sector do things differently from others, you would take the newer part, our part, internet platforms, and line it up against telcos. Telcos, many of which used to be nationalized companies and which were therefore used to automatically responding to government requests and turning over everything. And I still think you see that kind of tendency in looking at the sector as a whole, that the telcos are more willing to more quickly turn over more information.
Before we turn to the person you want to talk to, someone here raised the issue of governments and businesses cooperating, the topic. Oh, you've already spoken. Okay. Because that is an area that is confounding both governments and businesses. So I think it's something we all have to think about. Yeah, go ahead.
So Carlos Afonso from Brazil. I would like just to remind, because we're talking about ownership of data, and I understand that in some legal cultures, privacy is regarded as an individual right. But it's important to remind that privacy has also a social and a collective impact. So when I prohibit someone to treat, to mine, to sell the data of someone, I'm not only protecting this person who is the owner of the data, but as well the group in which its data belongs to. In case if it's a sensitive data, in terms if it's related to religion or to sexual information, when I protect this person, I'm also protecting the group to which this person belongs to. So it's important, we're talking about this legislation, that the legislation can or should provide this attention to the individual protection, but as well to this social, to this collective protection of privacy.
Thank you.
We're back here.
We have somebody. I'm
Ellen,
sorry.
can I just say one more thing?
Sure, go ahead.
Somebody raised the Global Network Initiative earlier, and anybody who's interested in seeing the guidelines and the principles there, globalnetworkinitiative.org. And Susan Morgan is here, I believe, who runs the initiative. And she would be happy, maybe Susan could, oh, she's identifying herself over there. She'd be happy to talk to people about that.
We can't hear you, Susan. What are you saying?
You're saying there's brochures over in the information section. Is that
Good.
right?
Okay. Kate, you have someone.
Yesterday, when the government representatives were here, I asked the question, why can't there be a global network where countries also work as players, not trying to run the internet? My question here is now, since there are so many users on these different networks, why isn't that governments want to protect users? Shouldn't it be the other way around, where companies like Google or Facebook should put down rules how they will go ahead and protect the rights of users, and then the government have to comply with them?
While I'm running up, can I just say one thing? I think one of the things that's interesting about the range of comments, to me, it comes to the question of responsibility. Is the responsibility with governments? Is it with corporations or the people creating technology? Is it with the engineers? Is it with us as you, well, okay, me, as a user, or with the other groups? So I think that's an interesting.
Let's vote on that. Yeah. Is it with us as users? Hello? Which is, it's, no, but wait. Should we as users be the ones who have to decide about privacy by not posting something or posting something? Should it be our responsibility? That's what it is now, right? Okay. Should it be governments? We had some suggestions that governments should do this. How about businesses? They should protect our data. How about a mixture? Okay. I think that's more complicated, but that's where we are. You wanted to make a comment.
Yeah, just briefly wanted to make a comment that there is a distinction that we should keep in mind between privacy and data protection. We've been talking a lot about data protection. The reason why I was highlighting the notion of spaces is that the more social the web becomes, the more we have to discuss what are the rules that are applicable to chat rooms, to groups on social platforms, and completely public spaces. I could very well imagine that the same kind of protection applies to a chat room that is clearly with a password among private citizens to any kind of discussion in a private home. And likewise, if you put on a blog something that is completely visible, then the rules of freedom of expression are different. So privacy is also connected to freedom of expression in terms of preserving spaces on the social media that are protected.
I think that's a nice theory, but when people have these little cameras, you may think you're speaking privately in your home, and it turns out they're posting this on YouTube because you fell down on your face. So, but it's a nice notion. Okay, over here.
I'd just like to point out that we're not really making much of a distinction in this conversation between the use of discretionary versus non-discretionary services and the various different frameworks and platforms that are available to users depending on what country they come from and who the providers in those countries are.
Okay. Any solutions about that? Just have smarter thinking in the room.
It was merely highlighting the point that it hasn't been sort of accommodated for in the conversation.
Okay. We have 5 minutes left for your solutions. You're here to speak truth to governments, to companies, and to each other. What should we be doing about protecting our privacy, about going after people who are keeping things private that should be public? Your ideas. Yes, please.
Hi, I'm Nart from Canada. One of the things I think we're talking about here is privacy around actors who ostensibly are willing to follow rules. But what we're not talking about is the fact that you can go online and buy 1 million Facebook accounts, that when your friend sent you that link to that funny video and you clicked on it, and then your credit card data or fulls, which is full name, date of birth, social insurance number, all of those are packaged and sold online. People can buy them. That is something that you only as a user can control because it's your personal computer that's getting compromised. So it's not, it's not just dealing with actors who provide services, who have privacy policies, and we can try to make them better, but users themselves are storing their own information in such a way that malicious actors are able to gather that information and exploit it.
Can you give us maybe 2 to 3 suggestions about how to avoid having our information be sold like this?
Simple tips are things, don't open email attachments from people you don't know, and if you have a question about it, contact that person and see if they really sent it. Be careful when you're installing software, because a lot of times it can be fake. There's a lot of software that pretends to be antivirus programs, for example, but are exactly the opposite. And also there's a lot of vulnerable applications that people need to always ensure that they keep their patches up to date. And some applications have a history of vulnerabilities, and people should probably avoid those.
And they can see you afterwards, right? Okay, Esther.
Hi, Esther, US. Related to that point, actually, so some people have said they don't believe in education, but for those of us who do, I think recognizing that people have different levels of skill in using the internet and figuring out interventions and teaching people how to use it in a more informed way. We did a study where we found that people who were more informed about the internet, more generally speaking, were more likely to be changing their privacy settings, for example.
Good. Okay, we have somebody over here.
Much more dramatic when you run.
Yeah, just to add on that briefly, I mean, I think at some point it's going to have to be individual users who are making decisions about privacy. You can regulate so far, but there are some things where you do want to give people the ability to decide for themselves. But in order to do that well, you need people to be able to easily be able to make informed decisions. And so one of the ideas we were bouncing around last night is this idea of doing what was done with nutritional labeling in the States some years ago, and having sort of a standardized, graphical, easy-to-use way for people to get at least high-level information about what are the ways that data will be used by the web services that they're investigating.
Great. We have time for maybe 2 more comments. Anybody want to make it?
Can I just ask, can anybody recommend the best site where you can find the best kind of practices and rules for what to do online?
Anybody have an answer to that? You're trying to be heard. Oh, Leslie has one too, Bob.
I think Frontline Defenders, if I'm not mistaken, and Tactical Technology Collective have put together a kit called Security in a Box. That's a good place to start. And there's more exciting things coming in that direction.
Good. And right here? And then back here. Okay, right here.
Get NetWise, all one word.